Welcome to the Schnitt Show. I'm Lionel, filling in for Todd Schnitt today. And joining me right now, I'm proud to say, is Larry Klayman, founder of Freedom Watch and former federal prosecutor. Larry, welcome, my friend.
Lionel, happy to see you.
Lion, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Lair, we can truncate names if you would like.
You are a lion.
Indeed, sir. Let's talk right off the bat. You've heard that the president's chief strategist, Steve Bannon, has just been either fired or his resignation accepted. Your thoughts and comments, sir?
I'm sorry to see him go. I mean, he was the populist in the White House. He was the most vehement anti-establishment person in the White House. I don't know what went on there, but you need somebody like that next to President Trump. And of course, he still has Steve Miller, who's very similar to Bannon. He's a former alumnus of Duke University, like I am, of course, 30 years behind me. But he's a troublemaker, and I think that you need a troublemaker in the White House. It's not going to accept the conventional establishment dribble of the Republican Party. So I am sorry to see him go, but we still have Miller.
Now, very quickly, do you think, Larry, that this is just a par for the course? This is just shuffling. We're 210 days since the inauguration. Is this much ado about nothing? Is this another media feeding frenzy and maelstrom pointing to this as more dissension and rats off a sinking ship? Or is it maybe General Kelly having his way, tightening the ranks?
Well, I think it is General Kelly having his way. And President Trump, of course, is the guy who's in charge. He's not going to do what other people tell him to do if he thinks it's wrong. And President Trump is in charge. And that's why, I love the guy, because he tells it like he sees it. He does what he thinks is right. Sometimes, he may not be right. I'm not right all the time either. I'm sure you're not either, Line.
No.
But it's in our heart. And we need someone in that White House, and we need a clear vision. We need some organization. And let's hope things go smoothly at this point. And the president needs to put the controversy of the last week behind him and move forward. And frankly, he didn't do anything wrong. I think what he said was absolutely right. There was guilt on both sides. He condemned the neo-Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan, but on the other side was Black Lives Matter and Farrakhan people and Sharpton people, and I think they're the flip side of the same coin. So he doesn't need to apologize for that. Let's move on.
Larry, support for the president among Republican senators, they say, many report, that it's decreased to the point that the president may be hanging on to his seat, some say, by 6 votes, according to Elaine Kamark of the Washington-based research group, the Brookings Institution. Think about this one.
Brookings, that's a far-left institution, so much so that our former President Nixon and Henry Kissinger broke into that, too. Not that that was right, but obviously this is a group that wants to bring down the President of the United States. And he doesn't need the Republican Party. Well, what do you need? A worthless bunch of do-nothings on Capitol Hill, people who are just in it for themselves. And this week we saw, Lionel, how they ran for the exits, afraid that they would be called racists if they actually endorsed what the president said with regard to, incorrect behavior on both sides, and also the whole issue of Civil War statues. They simply have no guts. The American people see that. That's why President Trump is the president. He really didn't win because he was a Republican. He won because he represented American people.
Larry, here in New York, just as an aside, I have garnered quite a bit of anger from some of my Broadway fans who, of course, were onto this because all of a sudden, overnight, they are Civil War historians. I mean, it's the most amazing things. They know everything about Robert E. Lee. And I said, I'm going to join you by hereby boycotting anything involving Hamilton, the music. And they go, what? What are you talking about? I said, well, the way I read it, and if you go through his particular case, in fact, it's hard, I would say, Larry Klayman, not to go back at that particular time and find anybody of any note who never said anything anentin regarding slavery that could somehow be misinterpreted in 2017 by a bunch of ne'er-do-wells, nincompoops, and autodidacts. But I digress. Let's talk about something more important. Larry, you wrote a tremendous piece, and I don't say that lightly, for Newsmax, called Sessions Abdicates His Responsibility Regarding Charlottesville. Tell us a little bit about that and your thesis, sir.
Well, Jeff Sessions, I happen to like as a person. I've known him since we were both young lawyers. He was quick to rush off and say they're doing an investigation of what happened with regard to the white separatists, the neo-Nazis, and the Ku Klux Klan. And that should be done. That's the role of the Justice Department. I'm a former justice lawyer. I believe in the oath of office that I took when I became a prosecutor. But he also needs to investigate what went on the other side with regard to Black Lives Matter, with regard to Farrakhan people, with regard to Antifa, a radical leftist group that's bent on overturning the government of this country. Not that that may necessarily be bad. I'm somewhat specific.
Well, but here's the part that gets me. Larry, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but as Gore Vidal says, I'm a conspiracy analyst. Now, when you watch what was happening on in Charlottesville, and number one, you look at that, and you look at old tape, you roll tape of Svoboda in Ukraine, and all of a sudden this rush on tiki torches. This looks like a new Fox show called Luau's Gone Bad, and all of a sudden these folks spontaneously are spouting blood and soil. I'm thinking, wait a minute, hold it. And then we find out that the ACLU worked in concert with a federal judge to refuse moving this to a place where perhaps violence would not have been as likely or as prone to occur. And then you have people who are showing up, Larry, lo and behold, out of nowhere, bedecked and armored in Kevlar, and I'm supposed to think, let me get this straight, that it was the nationalists or the racist or the white supremacists, whatever, and this ragtag bunch of peace-loving historical revisionists who just happen to go to the same Army-Navy store to get equipped for this riot. I mean, seriously, do they think that we're stupid or just daft?
Well, I think we're stupid. You know, here in New York, there's an expression, right? Stupid, right? They are stupid because you had racists on both sides. You had white racists, you had African-American racists. They wanted to rumble. They wanted to rock and roll. They wanted to create a scene. And they did it. And here the sad part is that this racial division, which really, is against what Martin Luther King stood for, or for other people stood for, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. These people wanted to abolish slavery. Sure, that was the norm in those days. But they're setting the whole racial relations of this country back 100 years. And that was started, of course, in the last 8 years as so much progress was being made by President Barack Obama, his attorney generals, Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. They had a chip on their shoulder. They wanted to whip up this racial division for political reasons. They thought they'd bring more people to the ballot box. And now we have a full-fledged racial war.
Larry,
and, this week we were diverted.
Larry, we
were diverted by...
I'm so sorry, Larry. The clock is my enemy as usual, and I don't think those people know the difference between Robert E. Lee, Sandra Lee, Pinky Lee, London Lee, or Johnny Lee. Looking for love in all the wrong places. Thanks, Larry Sosa, very much.